Hello. Think it's okay for where the camera is there now. Maybe. Wait. Kinda, sort of. Good enough. Currently have my cat over here, and she's deciding. Sorry, Lila. She's deciding to join us for our book club meeting today. And then my dog is over on the other side, and she's very jealous that she's not here. But hello, I am like 5 minutes late because I was at a doctor's appointment and that took me just totally forever to make it home and stuff. But trying to finish setting things up and opening things on my tablet so I can see the comments, because on here I don't always see the comments. But hi. And Lila says hi too. She has been such a cuddle bug for me lately. Okay. Yeah. Let's just get that set up and then I will start talking. Because I just wanted to pop on here to let you know that I am having a book club this week. Since I had to cancel it last week, I was not feeling my best. Still not feeling the best, but it's okay. I'm doing okay overall. And how are you guys doing? For those who are tuning in now or will be joining later, I hope you're doing well and that everything is okay with you. Yeah. Okay, I got that set up. All right, so we are doing our third book club, book coven meeting. My name is Elena and I'm enchanted for you to be here on my channel and joining in for our witchy chats and witchy book reading stuff. Our book is called Elemental Witchcraft and it's by Heron Michelle. We've actually gone through quite a lot of it if you were including today, so we've gone through quite a lot of the book already. On today's discussion, we're going from page 53 all the way to page 78. So those are the things that we're going to be discussing. I have a couple different pointers, different things to ask you, different things to get your opinion on, maybe, hopefully, and that kind of thing. And just am curious, how are you enjoying the book thus far? If you are reading along or if you've read it already, let me know what are you trying to do. There's no more up that you can go. This is as far up as you can go. I had my cat since she was a kitten. Like, I bottle fed her because my cousins found her outside in the middle of the yard, like nobody around, and she just fit on my palm. So I bottle fed her growing up, and she lived on my shoulder when she was a little kitten. Now she is no longer a little kitten. She is over 10 years old and she still tries to live on my shoulder, which is super cute and super sweet, and I love it. She's just such a cuddle bug, but she's a little big to stay on my shoulder. Yeah. Okay, so if you have read the book or are following along, let me know what your thoughts are so far, because we did go through quite a lot of it. And before I dive into all the little quotes and things that I have underlined and highlighted and sort of marked out to kind of chat about, I have a favorite quote that I want to share with you. I just need to find it because I didn't put little sticky tab on it. Let's Just give me a moment. I'm a little bit disorganized because I've been going through different medication changes, doctor appointments, all of that fun stuff. So, yeah, okay, here's my quote that I like. No, wait, that's not it. I had it. Come on. Okay, so the quote is on page 65, and it's kind of like a two-part thing. It's not a full exact continuous thing, but the thing that I really like is that, however, the longer one endeavors to understand the complexities of our natural world, opening the mind to new possibilities, one slowly uncovers the occult mysteries beneath the obvious. When you look for God, no matter what you find, you are partially correct. So she's talking about in regards to having your mind be open and just being receptive to the information, the magic, the elements around us, that kind of thing. And I like that because the longer you are trying to get in touch with the energies around you, the more open things start to become to you, and the easier you will be able, you will have an easier time to understand more of these occult things or these secret things or these like magical things, when in reality it was just there. You were not ready to receive that knowledge at that point until that time. Hope that makes sense. So that is one of my favorite quotes for this round of pages, and let me know yours. And hi, Lightfoot. I'm doing okay enough to be here. Thank you. I'm glad you're tuning in and coming to hang out with us. So if you have a favorite quote throughout that time, share it down in the chat box, or if you're watching this later, share it down in the comments below, that kind of thing. And I guess I will just dive in starting page 53 and kind of go over the things that I found interesting or want your take on, whatever. For the next book Coven meeting, because I did miss a week, I had to reschedule it, and I still want it to be kind of like on time for Samhain. We're going to add on like an extra. What are you doing? Where are you going? That's it? You're done? You're leaving? Okay. I'm going to add on an additional like 2 or 3 pages per our book Coven thing, just so that we can catch up a little bit. And I'm sorry about missing last week. All right, so page 53, which starts of the tenets of hermetic modern witchcraft. There was a comment under previous video about those who are doing book on Kindle instead of reading a physical book. I guess the pages don't match up, or the pages are different. So I'm also going to be providing markers so that you can see where we're at, not just based off of page numbers. Mostly it's going to be based off of page numbers because I think that's the easiest, since I have a physical copy of the book. But we're starting on page 53, and it is the start of the topic that says Tenets of Hermetic Modern Witchcraft. We'll go from there. That kind of thing. So here she mentions the 3-world model, and she says that the cosmos is multiform. Everything exists simultaneously within the spiritual plane, mental plane, and physical plane. I like that kind of explanation, or the thing that she points out is that things go on at the same time, not in sections. Everything is around us happening at once now throughout all of the dimensions, which might be like if you really sit down and take a moment to think about it, could be a little bit like ineffable because it's just so much out in the universe out there and all of that information and that kind of thing that there's just so much. But try not to let your brain go too crazy about, all of the multiverse complexities and whatever, all of that. But it through like a meditation I've had and going over like her multi-world model and then the diagram that we'll go over later and how things are like enveloped within each other. It's just a very large thing to comprehend, which just I think is a little bit intimidating, but also very interesting and just makes me feel so small and insignificant in this world compared to the isness and that everything is around us. Yeah. This time I have water. um, then she talks about magic and speech, which also ties into our previous book, club book Coven meeting, and how we were talking about words and language and writing is very important, and specifics and details are very important throughout magic and practice. And she kind of taps into that again. She points out that above and below are mirrors of each other, and things that you speak here in the now will also be mirrored to that of along the spiritual side, and things that happen along the spiritual side will also be mirrored into the world that's happening on the physical side. So I like how she points out that part again, how magic and speech and word choices are important. Then we go into the interconnection topics. How she talks about the threefold law of return, which, yes and no. I know that's a very common thing among practitioners to talk about the threefold law or the three rules of karma, how everything that gets put out into the world gets multiplied by 3 and sent back to you. I kind of agree with that and kind of don't agree with that. I'm going to try to explain it the best way that I can. Like, yes, every action has a reaction, but I don't think it's as lawed and structured as the threefold law or the karma that is very widespread and talked about it within the spiritual community. So it's not something that I believe completely, but it does have merit. I do believe in an action and a reaction, and you make a step and there's a consequence, whether it be positive or negative, that kind of thing. I just don't think it's as structured as like times 3 multiplied or however it is that she kind of explains it, if that makes sense. So that's my take on it. Let me know if you kind of share the same thought on that, or oops, I kicked that. Shouldn't do that. Or if you completely agree with the threefold law, or if you have a different sort of viewpoint on it. Super curious to know your perspective. Then continuing on to immortality and reincarnation, how she talks about that part of humanity's evolution. Do you believe in reincarnation? Because I totally, wholeheartedly, completely believe in reincarnation. Ever since I was a young kid, before I even knew what reincarnation meant, I believed in reincarnation. My thought process of this is kind of alongside a physics perspective that matter cannot be created or destroyed. So your soul cannot be created or destroyed. It has to go somewhere. It has to do something. So I believe in reincarnation. That's a very odd way of kind of putting it and explaining it why, but that's sort of my thought process behind it, or at least part of it. I also find it really interesting how younger children have these memories that they talk about their past lives and things that have happened, and how there's been like actual proof of the history that they've mentioned and brought up and talked about. So that's like another point of why I think reincarnation is a thing. I don't know. And it's pretty cool, Lightful, that you believe in it too. Let's see. I am on to the next thing that she talks about: free will and personal sovereignty. That's the word that I'm looking for. And she really starts to bring in Wiccan ideologies into this, especially read of the Wicca poem, and in regards to "in it harm none, do what you will." So she is a very kind of strong believer on that, and we go over more on more about it throughout like the later pages in regards to it. So the whole love and light witchcraft thing I think is great. I myself am not a full on love and light and just all goodness, that kind of thing. I try to be, but I don't claim to be completely that. I will never start anything or start any problems or try to, how to put it? I will never be the one to start any issues, but if somebody starts it with me, I will be the one to finish them. If that kind of makes sense. So I am more on the passive side. I try to be more on the love and light, but I do not take shit. That's just not gonna work. So that kind of thing. So I always say like I don't start things, but I will finish them. What is your take on the whole love and light? I do believe there needs to be a balance. There needs to be a positive and a, there's a moth. That's fantastic. A positive and a negative, everything has a balance. Yes. So you cannot just claim to be all good. It, to me, it just, I can't comprehend it. It just doesn't really make sense. Again, your perspective, your thought. We're going to get more into the ideology of the Wiccan religion later on in her book, like during this book club chat. And then I have a couple more things to say in regards to that, because Wicca is more of an organized religion type of thing that I do not follow. But there are some interesting parts in it. And again, I do want to warn you that she takes a lot of ideology from Wicca and talks about it and brings it into this book. So you don't have to be Wiccan to participate in this book. You don't have to practice anything Wicca related. You can just observe and take what works for you and leave the rest, which is kind of what I am doing. Next topic is balance of the pentacle path. I just mentioned it earlier, and I put a highlight thing in regards to the importance and the emphasis on balance. So she talks about how witches embrace both light and shadow along all phases of the birth, death, and rebirth cycle, that kind of thing. So she first mentions like love and light and staying with that, but then she also talks about both light and shadow and the embracing of it. So there's like a little bit of a contradiction between her words and how she phrases things and what she talks about versus the things that she like writes, but that kind of thing. Yes. So then she talks about her we go into the first meditation practice that she has. And life it says that I work to achieve a higher vibration while believing in balance. Yes, and I think that's a good rule to kind of go for. Try to be your best, do your best, but don't take any shit either. Don't let people walk all over you. Hi Lila, are you coming back? My pets today are very. This is Issy. Come here, Issy. You're gonna knock over the thing. Maybe not. This is her snoot here. This is Puppy. And my bird is currently in the cage under a blanket so that he stays quiet during our thing. Hi. Thank you. Yes, thank you for the kisses. You can go now. Shoop. Shoop. Bye. You said hi. Thank you. Good girl. All right. We are onto her meditation. If anybody did her meditation practice and your thoughts on it, and if you followed it kind of like by the book or that kind of thing, or if you had your own visuals and that sort of stuff. I read through it, but I did not go about how she explained it kind of like word for word and that kind of thing. So I did my own version of the meditation, which is very similar and relaxing and kind of like putting myself in the state of mind, kind of like ready to study pagan things, witchy things, if that makes sense. But I did not follow it like word for word. I want to know if you have and if you used her visuals or if you used your own visuals, that kind of thing. Here she talks about being in a perfect room for you. Instead of using a room, I like to see myself in a forest where it's like a very cozy, comfy cottage foresty place. That's some of the visuals that I use. If you're hearing odd noises in the background, that is my dog trying to play with a toy and get my attention. And yeah. Oh, did it roll away from you? Did the ball? Good. Good. She can't get to the ball. It should be quiet now. Yeah, another thing I wanted to mention is whenever I do these meditations is I like to light a candle. And whenever I do light the candle, I light it with an intention of what I'm meditating for or on or why I'm doing it. So before I light it, I kind of hold it. I have a little bit of like a phrase or saying or something in my head for this meditation. I would light the candle. I would do my thing. If the candle burned out completely, I just say thank you. If the candle did not burn out completely and I need to finish it before I extinguish the candle, I kind of say thank you and depart with the energies that were like present with me, if that makes sense. So chapter 3, this is page 59, and it's the start of the chapter 3. There's like a whole paragraph, and it has like a really nice short summary of everything that we went over before up until that point. And I will read it because I think it's like a nice segue to go into chapter 3 and kind of give an overall summary of everything that the book has said or mentioned beforehand. So it says, from the foundational paradigm of Hermetic philosophy, we've answered a few of the existential religious questions about the creation of the cosmos and humanity. The goddess merges the four elements to become all of divine nature, all of nature being multiform, containing both light and darkness, both mortal and immortal, and subject to destiny as governed by the seven spheres of the celestial mechanism. We learn that our human purpose is to learn, unite in love, and evolve into full realization of our divine mind, so we may someday rejoin with source and contribution our knowledge of existence. In this chapter, and she talks about what she'll further go over into the next chapter. So I like that, like, short and sweet summary of kind of all the things that we've been over. I think it was nice. And now we're into chapter 3, page 60. And here she has a chart about the witch's jewel of divinity. And I'm going to show that on screen. Okay, yeah, there we go. Centered on the screen. And it's very similar to sacred geometry and other, visual representations and that kind of stuff. And that would be my husband coming home. I'm still doing the book club. Yes. We'll go over that later. Yeah. So, yeah, Sunday I was in a bit of a car accident, and it was a hit and run by the other driver, and my husband was trying to fix the mirror that was like taken off. If you were part of my Instagram stories, you would have seen the flat tire that I had to change in the middle of the highway at the side of the highway. Yeah, I got to meet German police force. They were very kind, very nice. That kind of thing. So, hi Nanette. Good to see you here. So he just came in and like showed me the side mirror from my car. He goes, "Why?" I was like, "Well, I didn't do it on purpose." Anyways, I'm okay. I've just been on a world of adventures of like a bunch of stuff going on. Anyways, back to the witch's jewel of divinity. And she goes saying that descriptions of divinity are just poetic reflections of the ineffable. They're arrows that point in the direction of truth, but don't confuse the arrows for the destination, or you'll miss the most exciting part of the trip. Okay, actually, this was the quote that I wanted to share with you. Next time, I'm going to put a darn sticky note on the thing. So that is the quote that I wanted to share with, not the previous one that I initially did. But the other one, the one that I initially did was good too. This one is better though. So the descriptions of divinity are just poetic reflections of the ineffable. They are arrows that point in the direction of truth, but don't confuse the arrow for the destination, or you'll miss the most exciting part of the trip. And I think that is just a great way of putting it into perspective. Yes, you have a guiding hand, but you shouldn't just be, tunnel vision to get to the end. You should enjoy the journey to that destination, which I think is pretty darn cool. And then she puts down her description of the jewel of divinity, which looks very similar to the Merkaba. I think that's how you pronounce it. From other sacred geometry descriptions, and she touches on that later on in this book as well. And here she depicts 4 diamonds, like 3D diamonds. The outside is divinity. Then we have celestial innermost. Then we have the physical. And she goes over the information in regards to how she describes kind of like what is where and why she feels that that's the case, which I like her description. I like the visual that she provided. And I mentioned this when we first kind of started talking about a meditation, when you really start to think about just how vast all of that is outside of you and within you. It's kind of like mind-blowing and really hard to like comprehend. But very, very fascinating nonetheless. So the facets of the outermost diamond represent phases of the cycle of cosmic creation and destruction, called modalities and cardinal birth, fixed life, and mutable as death through generation. So that's kind of like her explanation, the outermost part. Then the facets of the intermediate diamond represent the seven celestial spheres of influence. And those we've talked about on the previous book club meetings, and how these facets form the cosmic patterns of destiny, like the die through which source as raw creative power is cast into form and character, and how through these facets source comes into greater focus and detail as the individual deities we know by name and cultural expressions. I like that. And then the innermost nested physical diamond are the center represents material nature with facets bringing into focus all material beings, every physical person, animal, plant, mineral, molecule, chemical element, and so on and so forth, that kind of thing. So it's all very interesting and fascinating. And then she goes, how does a witch employ this model for the magic? And she's like, oh, good. At least she's kind of tying it in of why that sacred geometry, why that information is kind of important for us practitioners. And I really appreciate that, other than just like randomly calling out information. I like how she ties it in to like the isness. So how you kind of have a map of where you can accurately focus on or meditate through things. So what she says is that it's kind of like good to have a visual representation almost of the map of divinity, and she provides a better map how she on the next page, and I will get to that. And I like that because you get a little bit of a footprint or a little bit of a way to be able to focus in more on your meditations, to add more details to your meditations. So, for example, if you want to work with like the maiden goddess or the middle world sacral chakra, there's a kind of spot amongst this sacred geometry piece that you can try to focus on to get more in touch with it. Now, it's not like it's, a guaranteed XYZ point on like a cardinal map. I think it's more for just giving yourself a sense of attaching to something, not attaching to something, having more of a focus point to be able to work your intentions better, more accurately, if that makes sense. Just having something where it's a little bit more tangible for you to kind of like get in the mental space for. That sort of thing. So then she says that if you rotate that 3D wireframe model and look down at a 45-degree angle, you get the sacred geometry of the hexagram comes into focus. And then she provides that hexagram with that map kind of sort of thing, which I'm going to show. And as I said, this is not like a full-on, XYZ cardinal points or map points or that kind of thing. I feel like it's just a really good way to be able to get yourself into the headspace for that like specific meditation, if that's the type of energies you want to work with or the type of energies you want to call on. So I like that. I've never really used it before like that until I read her explanation about it, and to me that just kind of makes sense. If that makes sense to you, let me know, and if not, if you see it differently, also let me know. But that just kind of like clicked in my head and was like, okay, I can see how I can incorporate that map into my practice. And then on this following page, she has explanations of more like information of the outer divinity, inner and that kind of thing, and how she's tying it into different spots. Yeah. I'm going to put up these charts on the blog post that's going to be accompanying um, with this book coven meeting, as I did with the other ones as well. So yeah. Then she also she talks about how when you are like meditating and getting into your practice, that you see what you are prepared to handle seeing, and then reality mirrors that expectation. So just because you want to jump right into all of this witchy woo woo stuff, spiritual stuff, doesn't mean everything is going to open to you completely right away all at once. Because if that were to happen to a person, they're probably going to get completely overwhelmed, burned out, scared, and run away tuck tail, hiding somewhere far, far away from this. Knowledge and information comes to you gradually at a pace that you yourself set for yourself. Not any quicker, not any slower. It's going to happen to you. Knowledge and all this information and understanding is going to come at a pace that is exactly what you need. You might be thinking on a conscious level that you want things to go faster and to hurry up, that you want to know more, you want to devour all of this information, but it doesn't exactly work that way, because on an unconscious level you need to process all of this stuff and you need to make sense of it. So even though consciously you might want to kind of have everything be done, be like, yes, I'm ready, show me all of the things, but on a subconscious level and an unconscious level, your mind is going like, we can take it a little slower. And I think that's a really good way that she points that out, and I think it's important to let people know, especially if you're a beginner and just starting out, everything will go at a pace that is right for you, even though you might not know that. um, And then the quote that I initially went over says that, however, the longer one endeavors to understand the complexities of our natural world, opening the mind to new possibilities, one slowly uncovers the occult mysteries beneath the obvious. So if you keep at it, it will come to you. Then she goes into the sacred poetry of Wicca. And she goes over like the witch's creed and do what you will be the challenge, so be it in love that harms none, for this is the only commandment. Kind of want to know your thoughts on it, if you've come across to that part in the book, that kind of thing. And then she has the poem The Charge of the Goddess by Doreen Valiente in it. And then afterwards she has the Read of the Wicca, also known from, attributed in current form to Lady Gwen, and that kind of thing. So this book is very strongly influenced by Wicca. I'm not going to read the full Charge of the Goddess, but I will read like maybe I'll read the first two stanzas. And it says, listen to the words of the Great Mother, who was of old also called Artemis, Astarte, Diana, Melusine, Aphrodite, Ceridwen, Dana, Arianrod, Isis, Bride, and by many other names. Don't come at me for pronouncing them wrong, because I probably pronounced them wrong. And then, whenever you have need of anything, once in a month, and better it be when the moon be full, then ye shall assemble in some secret place and adore the spirit of me, who am queen of all witcheries. And so she goes on for the thing. And I'm also going to read like the first two stanzas from the Read of the Wicca, and says, by the Wiccan laws ye must, in perfect love and perfect trust, live and let live, fairly take and fairly give. and she puts down like the full poems for that. When I first read it, I read it when I was getting into this stuff. I was maybe like in middle school ish, 12, 13 ish years old. And to me, that sounded very religious. And it is. Wicca is a religion. It's a spiritual religion. It has, you know, witchy stuff and practices and that kind of thing, but it is an organized religion. And going over I'm getting messages here. Sorry. So the net says that we all learn at a magical level, a place that is right for us, whether it's the magical or the mundane. Our brains can only take in so much. Yes, I agree with that. To give a timed label, we'll need to know. I mean, if we were meant to learn everything all at once, we would have come out of our mom knowing how to talk. That is very true. I like your example. um, and hi, Megs. I'm glad you're able to join in and jump in when you can. So back to the charge of the goddess. And thank you for agreeing with me, Nanette and Megs. I'm happy you're able to join in and participate when you can. Now, when I first read it, I was 12, 13-ish years old. And to me, it really sounded like something that could have come out of the Bible, because I was coming from a very Christian side of religion and that kind of thing. And there's a lot of overlap in the symbology and phrases used from like the charge of the goddess and the Wiccan Rede and other like biblical verses and stanzas and that kind of thing. If you go through it like more open-mindedly, I guess, and not kind of like chop it into pieces, there's a lot of overlap in symbolism, which I find very interesting. Again, I'm not Wiccan, and I don't really like the whole organized religion part of it and how they have like such big structure. That just does not resonate for me completely. But if it works for you, I'm really happy that it does. And if it doesn't, I also am glad that it doesn't. So it just to each their own, to what works for you. Just don't think that there's only one right way to practice and be spiritual, or that there's only, you know, one right way and everything else is wrong, that kind of thing, whether you're Wiccan, Buddhist, whatever, any of that kind of thing. And I will keep reminding people during the book clubs or chats and whatever that it is highly based off of Wiccan ideology, but you do not need to interpret it as such. You can interpret it and take what resonates with you. Yes. Then she talks about defining perfection and what perfection means to witches, and how it's like a loaded term in our modern world and that kind of thing. But one of the things that she does say, that perfect love is unconditional, and that those who are spiritual practitioners, for example, things like Wicca and that kind of thing, or who work with deities as a spiritual person, I like how she says that the relationship humans have with their god, goddess, is not transactional. There is no quid pro quo, no do as I say or else, no ranking of superiority, and no possible way to be abandoned. I just really, really love that part, because on a spiritual level, if you are working with deities, the whole thing of, you know, and God will smite you if you do something not to his liking, really instills a lot of fear. But if you do it more from a pagan perspective, there is no possible way for the energies, the deities from the paganism side to abandon you. There's nothing you can do for it to abandon you. And I just really like that. That just that feels like you have a place of home that you cannot be worried about doing something wrong and being kicked out of. And I just really like how she brings that up, and I think that's a beautiful kind of way to see it. That kind of thing. Um, um, okay, so Meg's is also coming from Christianity and is taking what resonates and leaves the rest. Good. So, talking about how the library is great. Yes, it is. And that she agrees she never felt the God of the Old West, that never felt right. Yes, so I definitely like how she mentioned that there's no possible way to be abandoned, and I feel like that's just a beautiful way to put it. And let's see, to pledge to enter a witch's circle in perfect love is an acknowledgement that we are all interconnected and sacred, and you pledge to treat others in that temple with the same benevolence of the god goddess with equal dignity and consideration. I also wanted to read that and point out that we are all connected regardless of what background you're from, what religion you're from, who you're from, where you're from, when you're from. It's all connected. We are all connected. Yes. Okay. Continuing on. We have a couple more pages to go. Then we go over then we're going over perfect love is benevolent, and how she mentions that witches can't think in terms like good or bad, and that the hermetic principle of rhythm reminds us that the goddess must be all sides of every equation in balanced measure, which I agree with. Everything is balanced. You cannot have black and white thinking and that kind of thing. And I like how she points that out, but she also, again, kind of contradicts herself a little bit on her on the further pages, because here she mentions how things are, we can't think in terms of it being good or bad, and that everything is balanced and measured, which I totally agree. But then later on, she talks about how she doesn't see it as good or bad, how she sees it as beneficial or baneful, which to me is the same thing. Um, because good and bad, good is the beneficial part, baneful is the bad part, which again puts it on like that black and white thinking. So I think that's a little bit contradictory on her part. She kind of explains it how she sees it in like a slightly different thing other than the currency of good and bad, but then she still goes back to defining things as good and bad, still giving it that black and white thing. I'm not a fan of that, because I more believe that there is bad, there is good, but then there's also a bunch of stuff that's in between, and good and bad is all in the perspective of the person who is judging what is good and bad. So something good for me might feel like something is bad for somebody else. That kind of thing. For example, here's a very simple, very mundane explanation of good and bad. I really like sparkling water. To me, this is good. I like the bubbles. I like the way it tingles on my tongue. But then there's another half of the population that go like, "Oh my gosh, it's static in my mouth. I absolutely hate it. That is bad for me." This is a very, very simple example, because water is not inherently good or bad. It's just on a specific kind of like perspective of your tastes, but that does show that what I think is good to me could be bad for somebody else, even though this in itself is a neutral point. Does that make sense? And same thing with magic and like other practices. What is good for me could be bad for somebody else, but that thing itself is neutral. And the only way that it's getting a perspective of baneful or beneficial is from that individual who's doing the judging of that item, that event, that circumstance, that spell, that book, that dot dot dot. So for me, balance is important, and I understand that there is good and bad and all of that in between. It is not black and white, it's just thousands shades of gray. um, and she tries to talk about the whole balance thing, and but the fact then she goes back to saying like I prefer the more precise distinctions of baneful of beneficial versus baneful, and to me that's kind of the same thing, just different words. Anyways, that's kind of like my little spiel on it, and then there's stuff being written in the chat. I'm gonna go over that. So Nanette saying, understand being hesitant at first to get into witchcraft. All can find Wiccan books. Being in a church with Christian, reason I bring this up is that gets better over time. You just have to deconstruct and figure out what works for you. Yes, that's a good way of providing it. Just take your time and see what is comfortable with you, an open interpretation, and see what fits for you. That's good. Thank you for sharing that, Nanette. Yeah, that was a great thing to share. Thank you. I appreciate that. She said, I wish I had found this book back when I was learning about witchcraft because it would have helped me a lot coming out of Christian religion, feeling like I would be abandoned. I finally realized that on my own and everything to being in the craft for a while, but it would have been helped in the beginning if I had known all this stuff. Yes, and that feeling of like abandonment or being left alone or left to yourself, your own devices, is kind of scary when you're going from a place where, for example, Christianity, religion, where you've grown up in it, your whole family is that's something that all you know, but it just does not resonate with you and it does not feel right. And going from a place of something that feels safe and secure and out to explore something else, be it a different type of religion, be it spirituality, be it paganism, be it nothingness, it is a scary transition, and humans are social creatures, and that thought of being like left alone or being by yourself or being abandoned is a very uncomfortable feeling, which is why I really like doing the witchy chats, my videos, when I get back into doing more of my videos and doing these book clubs and all of this, just to have a space and a spot in a community for those who are interested in exploring something else or are continuous or have been in this practice for a while and just want like a safe community to kind of talk about the isness, witchy stuff, witchy books and whatever, just to know that you are not alone and that there will always be a place for you. You just need to find it, and you will find it. But yeah, that is definitely an uncomfortable feeling when you are stuck in a place where it just does not resonate with you and does not feel right, but you just don't know what else and how else to get to that point, if that makes sense. Hi, husband, again. Okay, so continuing on to the next part. She also talks about that witches respect free will, and I think free will is very important amongst your practice, be it your own free will and other people's free will, and not to do any sort of workings without the consent of others. If you're doing it for them, even if it's something that you think might be beneficial, they might not find it beneficial, as we've just had the sparkling water example. So free will is very, very important. Then she has a list of 9 divine love conditions of the natural order. which I think is very ballsy of her to put down, of these being, specific conditions of divine love. That kind of thing. So, okay, thank you for agreeing with me, Nanette, in the good and bad, and how there's definitely a balance and more than just black and white. Anyways, back to her being kind of ballsy and defining 9 love conditions of natural order, which I think it's very interesting in how she's so like concrete about it. And I don't disagree with her, but I just find it interesting that she's able to kind of put it in such a short list, kind of, even though I think there's so much more to expand on it. Um, so yeah, so the list is resources, and that I have what I need to ensure my physical survival and comfort, clean air and water, nourishing food, safe shelter and clothing. And then she goes to affection, free will, acceptance, security, trustworthiness, expression, authenticity, and reciprocity. 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 I feel like I'm saying that wrong. But I also think the reason she puts down that list is also has something to do with the Abrahamic religions and how she's trying to instill that this is what love means, like unconditional love means, and compared to what the Abrahamic religions preach as to what love is. That kind of thing. So I like her list. I do not disagree with it. I just think that it's just an interesting way that she put it down as an explanation. What are your thoughts on it? Let's see. I went over the whole beneficial of baneful. I am now on page 73. She also talks about the 4 rules of personal sovereignty. Sovereignty. I think that's how to pronounce it. English is not my first language. So and that's kind of like the ending of what our pages are. Yeah. So she has 4 rules for personal sovereignty, and it's like how are witches supposed to behave while putting these ideals of divine love into action. Again, it's very structured, and the whole thing of rules and like super structured religious thing that just kind of doesn't really resonate with me. So accept what feels right to move on from what doesn't. I like her explanations. I don't really like to call them rules. I don't know. I don't know how to really explain my standpoint on that. But they are some pretty good ideas to live by. So it says, don't burn the witch, which is self care and compassion. And she talks about how the inner mystery is self care, so don't burn yourself out. And I kind of like how she puts down, like, the don't burn the witch. So don't burn yourself out for in the stake of fear and self-loathing. Divine love includes you, so give yourself a break. And that I 100% support and agree with and completely go alongside with. So she talks about how self-care is paramount to successful magic, and you need to establish a healthy set of priorities and attend to your health first, which is very important. And that is going to be different from person to person, from individual to individual, from practitioner to practitioner. What works for you, what constitutes as a full night's sleep for you might be different than a full night's sleep for somebody else. Maybe somebody doesn't really like to sleep during the night. They like to sleep, during different times. So that is definitely on an individual basis of what works for you, but you need to find out what works for you. So proper rest, proper nutrition, hydration, the whole drinks thing, physical and mental pampering, sexual intimacy, and enjoyment of life are not rewards reserved for the most dominant. They are human rights and a witching credo. So it's something that you should incorporate into your practice. Your health and sanity should be a priority. And then the outer mystery is compassion part. So don't burn other witches at any stakes either. So I like how she kind of talks about that. Let me get my thoughts in order. She mentions that you're weaponizing traumas as an excuse to further traumatize others. So just because you went through something bad, that doesn't mean you need to put somebody else through something bad either. And how that there's a cycle of woundings that we have to break. She's like, challenge you to find any bully or criminal you'd like to hex into oblivion and dig deeper into their motivations. I promise you will find a traumatized and victimized child of the goddess who is inappropriately lashing out in defense of their wounds because they just don't know any better. But you do. However, don't confuse this explanation for an excuse to carry on their baneful behavior. So there is an explanation behind everybody's actions. I completely agree. And I like how she also points that out, that there's an explanation, but it's not an excuse. And again, it just kind of seems like the whole love and light thing that she was kind of talking about, but then she also brings up the not using it as an excuse, and that witches defend the boundaries between benefit and bane, take action to protect the natural order of divine love. So don't do anything harmful back, but protect yourself, protect your own energy, that kind of thing. Which I agree with, but also there's also a limit to how much you're able to do just warding and protecting until you need to do a further step. For example, a further step of what I have done before in the past, I've worked with a coworker that I just did not mesh with. Her and I were never on the same page. She disliked me, I disliked her. She was older, she expected to be respected, and I think respect is earned, not just given, and it was a whole big thing. And I've protected myself, and at the end, I'm just like, you know what? I'm going to do this spell. I don't want anything bad to happen to her, but I want her to get a job opportunity that would be great for her, be perfect for her, somewhere else, far away from me, please. And it happened. And she was very sad to leave the place, but she got a really good job opportunity a state over. And I got left my piece, and she got left to my piece. So I think that could be a way for you to take on of protecting yourself without causing harm to someone. In fact, I feel like I've caused, a better solution to her, because that workplace was closer to, it was in her state instead of having for her to drive. So it was actually beneficial towards her and beneficial to me because I no longer had to work with her. Anyways, on to the next rule. Don't be the problem, which is the effectiveness and ethics. The inner mystery is effectiveness. And that many of the problematic shadows, which is struggle in facing, are what psychologists call a traumatic stress reaction, which is very true. Shadow work is just a different terminology for, your psychology and understanding yourself and your psyche and the things that happened within you. Just shadow work also encompasses the outside spiritual energies and effects, and not just focusing on things just within you as psychology does. Let's see. And she also says that our stress reactions are a natural response to an unnatural circumstance. I like that quote. Then the outer mystery is the ethics. It says too often traumatic wounds are inflicted through maladaptive reactions to personal trauma, which then damage our interconnected web unintentionally. And she talks about that, and then she also brings in the witch's creed, so be it in love that harms none, dot dot dot, and then the threefold law and that kind of thing, which she also kind of contradicts herself in the previous things that we've talked about, and then she brings, that part of the Wiccan religion back into it. Again, take what resonates with you. I've mentioned before my stand process on the whole threefold law of karma, or whatever, that kind of thing. Um, and how she's also, kind of saying one thing and then explaining it in a different way, but then it ends up meaning the same thing and just kind of like a little bit of a loop-de-loop circle, that sort of thing. Her next rule is don't be the weak link, severity and responsibility. So the inner mystery is severity. The panentheist cosmos is often described as a web or woven tapestry, that kind of thing. And then the outer mystery is responsibility. However, even if one link weekends sees themselves as a straight line pointing only to their own ego, burns themselves through self loathing, or projects the fear onto others as distrust. So I like that, but I also feel like she talks about it a little bit harsher than she needs to. And then lastly, her fourth rule is must be present to win, mindfulness and activism. So the inner mystery is mindfulness, witches are called to wake up from the illusion of separateness. Each exquisite moment of life is a gift and not to be squandered. And I agree, it's good to be mindful and present of your current situation, of where you're at, be it good, be it bad. Also in regards to, journaling and putting down things openly without sugarcoating stuff. Just be present in where you are now and how things are going. And then for the outer mystery, activism, witchcraft is not pacifism, it is activism. It can be peaceful and cooperative, but neither does it turn the other cheek. So must be present to win is our calling to show up in person, to pay full attention, to listen carefully and speak up thoughtfully. So she again kind of contradicts herself in regards to, the love and light, do harm none as you will, but don't turn the other cheek and that kind of thing, which is a little interesting, a sort of way to kind of point that part out. So yeah, those are her rules of sovereignty, and that brings us to the end of our book club meeting for this time. Just gonna go over some things in the chat. Um, so So Nanette mentioning that if you go out of your way and do a spell, that you should have someone's permission. If it is helping them, obviously someone is doing something bad to you. Turn back to sender. Yeah, so definitely do free will. We kind of talked about it and how I said it's important in practice. Even if you think it's something good and beneficial that you're doing for someone, get that person's permission, or at least make them be aware and ask that it's okay for that kind of thing. And wishes are little spells. Like, I know they're a lot more fleeting and that kind of thing, and it's not something that you like full on sit down and like meditate, but doing a wish or like whispering a wish or having that like quick thing, or like, oh, I wish this and this will happen, that's a form of a spell. That's a form of attracting that type of energy to you. that sort of thing. But yeah, it's important to get permission, even if you think it's a good thing that will help them. Um, I think it's good to, if they're not, okay, this kind of gets into a little bit of a tricky situation because I have a friend currently who is in a bit of a situation with this. Um, so she reached out to me for help in a specific matter in her family. And she is not a full practitioner, but she's not against it, and she has done a couple things here and there, especially when we were younger. So she asked for my help and she wants it something for her family. And I kind of gave her an advice. And then she said that her husband would not really be happy to have, that be open, or that he would laugh at her and whatever. And I'm just like, okay, well, then let's do it differently. You do it for yourself and for the benefit of your family. You don't say individual names, don't say individual things, just have it be a benefit for yourself and your family. And if that person thinks, poorly of this, if you think that their energy is going to impact what you're trying to do negatively, then don't tell them, because you are part of that family and you are trying to do things better for it. So that's a little bit on the iffy-ish part of the whole free will thing, but the only reason why I think it's okay is that it's not individualized to a specific person of what she's doing. She's trying to do something that would benefit her family as a whole, which includes her and includes others within that family. So I think that part of the free will and not telling them is okay, especially if she were to tell him, it might impact it negatively in what she's trying to do. But if it is a thing specific directly for one person, then I think that free will needs to be taken into accountability. For example, let's go back into the whole work thing. The way that I did it was not to force my coworker to get a different job. No, I wanted it in a way that she would get an opportunity that would be best for her at her own time, her own pace, whatever the case may be, so that she would accept something that would work for her and leave me the F alone. To me, that did not feel like an interference of her free will, because she was the one that had the choice if she were to accept that job offer or not. Does that make sense? It is just an opportunity provided in her direction, and she's the one that made the ultimate choice whether she wanted to leave or did not want to leave. It was not something that I forced her to do. Um, Another part of it being against someone's will is, for example, mm, let's just say you have a friend that has come to you, mentioned that they were struggling financially and whatever, and so you decide to do a spell yourself to give them a job promotion because you think a job promotion would tick off all the things that they've complained to you in regards to a financial thing, and they get that job promotion. But the job promotion also includes them spending more time at work. That job promotion also includes more stress, more responsibilities, where even though they do have that financial benefit that you think was going to help them, they're they were mentally not prepared to take on more of that stress and responsibility. So in turn, it was not a beneficial thing that you have done. Does that make sense? So with that part, I would say that that is interfering with her, with your friend's free will of making them get that job promotion because they initially didn't really want it. So if it's something having to deal with that, I would have talked to my friend first, be like, hey, I can try to do spell work for this. Would you be interested to seeing if that was something to be helpful? And they can be like, oh, yes, great. Let me look into what the promotion means or whatever. Or they could be like, wait, no, hold on, that means I'll have to, you know, stay at work longer, I can't see my kids as often, this and that. So a promotion is actually just not going to be the best option for, you know, my financial situation or my mental situation or my home situation, whatever the case is. So that's an example of you thinking that you're trying to do something good for your friend, but it turns out to not be good, and which is where that gray scale area comes in. I hope those explanations were good in regards to the free will aspect of it, and kind of the your thought process of what beneficial is and not, maybe. Um, let's see. Oh, I like that, Nanette. Yeah. So knowing yourself is a good thing, but there comes a point when you know yourself that you have to start working on yourself. Yeah, that's very good and very important. I like that. Sometimes that can be a little hard as somebody that struggles with the fact that I have to relearn myself over and over again, work on myself. Yeah, definitely. I understand that, and I think that's a great thing that you're sharing. But I think this wraps up our Witchy Book Coven chat about our book. Um, and I hope you enjoyed our conversation, enjoyed our chats. I love any of you who are joining now or later or will be watching it, you know, next month or whatever. I definitely love to hear your perspectives. I love to chat with you about all of this stuff, and I look forward to the next book meeting, which is going to be next Tuesday. So we are going to be reading pages 79 through yeah, let's add on until page 103, which is chapter 5. So those who have a online book that don't have the pages, we're going with starting from meditation 2 up until chapter 5, elemental basics. So page 79 to 103, and that's what we'll be discussing on the next book coven meeting. So I truly enjoyed this. Yeah. Oh, I like how Nina also brought up question everything, even what I say, because what may work for me may not work for you. So yeah, that's definitely true. Question everything. And I like how Heron also points that out repeatedly. Even in her own book, she's saying, don't take what I say, you know, word for word. Take what resonates with you, question everything, do your own research, and that kind of thing. All right, so with that, I will see you on the next video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, the whole shebang. We have tons of magical fun here, and I will see you on the next video. Love you all.